From Rixie, this is Frameform, a show about movies, moving, and everything in between. I'm Hannah Weber.
I'm Jen Ray.
And I'm Claire Schweitzer.
Hey everyone, it's Jen Ray. This panel discussion was recorded in August 2019 at an event co-presented by Vancouver International Tap Dance Festival and Cascadia Dance and Cinema Festival. This was produced in association with Vancouver Tap Dance Society and Screen Dance Forum. The conversation on tap dance and media involved Andrew Nemr, Max Pollak, Demi Remick, Danny Nielson, and was facilitated by me, Jen Ray, Frameform co-host and Dancinema Festival founder and producer. We had a conversation on how media and technology are inextricably linked to our experiences as dancers and humans, no matter when or where we are. This was a truly funny, enlightening, and dynamic conversation. Enjoy.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. Tonight is the second event in the Vancouver International Tap Dance Festival, produced by the Vancouver Tap Dance Society. Yeah, it's only day 2. Before we begin, we like to acknowledge that we're on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. Part of that honoring is being able to talk about where we come from and what it is that we do in that light. So I'm very happy to welcome these phenomenal artists and Jen Ray from Screen Dance Forum, who's going to be moderating this panel discussion.
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Ray. You might have met me yesterday, or maybe we know each other from before. I'm born and raised in Vancouver. I started my company Dancinema out of a seeing a need to connect the two forms and languages and educate audiences both on the dance side and the film side. Started making films and moved into more festival production. So my festival, Cascadia Dance and Cinema Festival, happens here in Vancouver. I moved to the States when I married a tap dancer. So I also have a festival in Washington, D.C., and we co-direct a youth tap dance company together called the Jam Youth Project. So with that, we have a lot of experience with media and kind of the younger generation of tap dancers. And, you know, there's been some celebration, some pushback, and I think that it's really interesting. We have people from a diverse, backgrounds here, based in different cities, different countries, different relationships to how you use media, how you, whether you're a performer, an educator. So today's topic is really broad, tap dance and media. We're all consumers and producers of media. It's integrated in our lives in a way that it's probably never going to go away. So it's something that it's useful to pause and reflect on how, especially in art forms such as tap dance, which has such a rich history. And I find that tap dancers are very concerned with the integrity of their art form in a way that other styles of dance maybe are not so much concerned with. What are the roots? How are you evolving it? Is it respectful or not? So I'm sure we probably have 4 very different opinions here, maybe not, on what that means. So that's my intro. Let's go Danny, then Max, then Demi, then Andrew, and then we'll start our conversation from there. So maybe introduce, who you are, where you're based, even if people know, and something about, where your position is within the tap community, or at least how you maybe see it, and also your relationship with how you experience tap dance and media.
Do I have to go first?
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Danny.
I'd rather not go first.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll take
Okay.
it. Or whatever.
Who wants to go?
I'll give it a shot, I guess.
That's my girl.
Okay.
You got this.
I'll go first. My name's Demi. I'm from New Hampshire originally, and I live currently in New York, in Queens. And I am of, I think, the younger generation, and I grew up learning tap dance through the festival circuits and working privately with people I sought out. And I worked with Michelle Dorrance for a while in her company, went to college, studied modern and ballet, left tap dance for a bit, came back, and because of Sarah Reich, I got to work with Postmodern Jukebox, and I still do, and I've been teaching at festivals and working with Caleb Teicher and company a lot as he's growing very quickly, and a few personal choreographic endeavors. So, and that's my life. And the other question was,
And how about media? What's your relationship with tap dance and media?
I think I was of the generation that didn't have it, and then completely had all the access, but there's another generation below me that has always had the access. So I think I've seen both, which is a little lucky of me just to have been born just to have seen both sides, because I think I see like younger dancers completely in it and never didn't live without it. But the band I dance with is a media-based band, and like part of that job is to encourage videoing during our show and encourage live feeds and live posting, and it's terrifying, and I don't completely love it. It's terrifying to know that everything you do at any moment can't just be something you wanted to try that night, that it could live on forever for people to see, and that's kind of a scary thing that is encouraged with Postmodern Jukebox. So that's
Well, you're still doing great.
Yeah, thanks. I like it too. It's part of like the great thing about the band, and also like, whoa, it's kind of scary, but yeah.
You'll be stronger.
More to come. Yeah.
Amazing. Go. So, I guess I'm of the. Am I of the older generation now?
I don't know. You're not a millennial.
I didn't really know what to say.
Yeah, okay. I'm like,
You got two millennials here.
are we
I don't know
placing
about
it that
the
way? Gosh, man, that feels really weird. So I remember taking class with Savion with Max in Broadway Dance Center in the early '90s.
Aww.
So that's where, yeah. I was a lot shorter then.
And a lot more gray too, right?
Yeah, and Max had a lot more hair.
Yes, I did.
So I guess my first encounter with media was getting my first like compilation of tap dance clips on a VHS tape. It was like one of those extended play VHS tapes that lasted 6 hours. And so the binding had a label that had all these names, and it was like 5 lines worth of handwritten names. It took me about a week to watch. And so I've seen kind of all the changes. And I think for me, I worked with Savion off and on for about 13 years, was mentored by Gregory Hines, and have attempted to navigate like the benefits and the challenges of like cultural context for the craft work. So as an artist, how do I engage based on the expectations of people based on the context of the culture? And that changes, it seems like, every 6 months when there's a new tech platform that comes out.
New app.
And people are like, this is how we communicate now. And I'm like, okay, does that mean I have to tap dance there?
Yeah.
Like, is that where it's happening? So yeah, that's kind of been my journey.
So my name is Max Pollak. I'm from Vienna, Austria, and that changes everything because where I grew up, there was absolutely no tap dancing. There still isn't. So my only contact with tap dancing, my first contact with tap dancing was through television, black and white television. That's how old I am. And when I got interested in it, I was 5 years old, and there was zero information. Zero. There was no teaching available. There were no classes available in Vienna, because Vienna is very much about classical music, or especially back then it was. And it was impossible to find instruction. So my only access in the beginning of my interest in tap dance was watching television and waiting for the next Fred Astaire movie to come on. Luckily, they somehow had these movies in rotation. So like, if you waited 3 months, you could see the same movie again. You know, so I'd be glued to the TV and just watch it. So and then, you know, as a 6-year-old, like I'd be like hopping around in front of the TV, like, what was that he did? You know, and then I'd grab my dad's hat and I'd like try to dance with a hat or with a cane. And my first access was improvisational, because the only instruction I had was this, you know, like in real time kind of broadcast that was then gone. Then my next level of getting deeper into it was my mentor, Carnell Lyons, who gave me footage and this was 1987. So footage in 1987 was platinum. You know, it was unheard of. And these videotapes that I got from him, I still have, and they are, you know, to me, I will never, you know, give them up. And they were very, very important to me. And they were also, for me, the first contact with African American tap dance, because before that, I had only seen white people on screen. And of course, I had met Carnell, and that was a very intense moment because he is black and he is of the original generation. More about that in my solo show, All in One. Skipping ahead to New York, being here and also being of the generation that I am of, my access or my contact with internet culture is a little bit different because I'm not as tech savvy as younger people. However, I'm doing it as much as I can, not as much as I should probably, but it is always a challenge because I remember when we used to go to La Cave, it was a very difficult territory to come with a video camera. It was a no-no, you know? Nobody was allowed to videotape. The only people who were videotaping at La Cave, for instance, were this gentleman, John, I can't even remember his last name, from New Orleans, who was a friend of Jimmy's, who was allowed by Jimmy officially to document these events. And the other person was Roxanne Butterfly, who had her camera and was smart enough to start filming as soon as she could and filmed everything. And she has an unbelievable library of footage of everyone. I haven't seen all her footage, and I'm in a lot of it because we used to work together a lot, and Andrew too. So people like Roxanne, or especially her, are like a key to the media contact with tap dance during this time period. We are a little bit of a, I don't want to call it lost generation, but we're a little bit of a generation that sits in between things because of the timing when we started being active. So that'll be something to talk about. And nowadays, I have recorded a CD, a music CD with my band. That's another angle of media that we can talk about. That's something that's very challenging, especially nowadays where nobody makes CDs anymore, you know, and everything is being copied and sent off. As soon as you publish it, it's impossible to make any money with your own compositions. I write music, I arrange music, and I would like to make money with that also. That's basically now gone, unless you write music for video games, pretty much. But that's another conversation, and I'll leave it there.
So you're gonna write music for video games, is what you're saying?
Right, basically.
If you like the best soundtrack ever, I might actually start gaming.
Okay.
My name's Danny. I'm originally from Calgary, Alberta. I'm back there now currently. And for me, growing up in Calgary, there wasn't a lot of access. I grew up at a regular competition dance studio. I wasn't aware of who a lot of these people were. It wasn't until I had a male teacher suggest I go search out some of these movies, like the movie Tap that I could rent at Blockbuster, or White Nights as well. And that was kind of my first introduction to seeing, you know, some of these dancers, Gregory Hines and all these people. Lisa Latouche came to my dance school when I was 14, I believe. And she had just come from New York Tap Festival and was talking about all these names. So I definitely gravitated towards her and went towards her for information, where to go. The following summer, there's a dancer named Sean Cheeseman. He's on So You Think and all that, but he had a dance camp running in Calgary because he's originally from there. And the first year he brought Brill Barrett. That was kind of like my first introduction to a lot of things. He then suggested I go to Vancouver Tap Festival, which is the first time I met Diane Walker and a lot of these people. And then from there, I started to travel the festival circuit, much like Demi, and I grew up there. I don't know if I'm the same generation as you. I think I'm one above.
I saw you, but I was.
Yeah.
It's like, I remember you because
Yeah.
you're older.
Above you.
I was like a little kid.
Yeah. So I mean, I come from the days of also trading VHS tapes. I mean, I used to be on the festival circuit and used to hang out with like Sarah Reich and Nico Rubio and Lee Howard and Star Dixon. We all used to go to St. Louis, and Robert Reed used to have his little, I don't know what it was, but it had clips upon clips upon clips upon clips on there. So we used to watch that, and we also would trade VHS tapes. I got my hands on those, and I remember just like holding that with so much praise because these clips weren't out there. I remember there used to be one site called Off Jazz online.
Yes, I remember that.
And the clips were like maybe
yes.
like 10 to 13 seconds long. You know, that's when I first saw like Van Porter and Ted Levy, and they were doing, you know, Flash and short little clip of Chuck Green. And I just had like a nerdiness for this stuff. And then I would say like, I mean, when we were like 18, 19, that's when MySpace came out. So that was like...
Everything changed.
That's when things started to change and the videos became more apparent. So like, I would say I was like 22, 23 before all the social media things happened. Yeah, it's been an interesting transition to see all those, you know, everything's available now. And one of the most interesting things to me is, you know, when I go teach from studio to studio, you ask some of the students, like, who is Gregory Hines? Who is Savion Gulliver? And they have no clue, but yet everything is on YouTube now. So it's interesting, that dynamic of things, but yeah, I'll leave it there.
That's the perfect segue because we do live in a time that's so saturated. We have more access than ever, but it's like, how do you even filter through these things? And it's always been important to curate content, and that's kind of what I'm seeing emerge as a theme here. You know, you have Off Jazz, you have Lady Di's lecture tapes. It's still a curation. It's still a bestowing of knowledge and saying these are the worthwhile voices. That said, we screened American Tap yesterday, and whenever you do a documentary, there's such a balance to, okay, who are we interviewing? What's possible? What kind of topics we're going to cover? How do we edit this thing? And I wondered if everyone here saw it, right? Everyone was here? So could you maybe speak to, was there like someone that was highlighted where you're like, no, that's not at all how it was? Or like, why did they say this person? Because it is a selective history. And Andrew, you're extremely educated and passionate. You talk a lot about oral history, but right now I think digital history is kind of the future, and you know, is a way that a lot of us encounter and access tap in the first place. So maybe speak to, what's your feedback from the film last night, good or bad? Like, is there something that was missing, something you're like, they got that right? Anyone that you would have highlighted that wasn't involved? Anything that bothered you?
Well, I will say I was very impressed with the historic part of it, the first part. That was very, very, very well researched and very well presented and covered, from my point of view and from my point of knowledge, the most important aspects of our history that I have learned and read about and heard about. So I really commend them on doing that. It was engaging and really full of important information. In the later part where they were talking about, you know, the sort of like more recent history, I noticed that they were always crediting or giving information about who was talking or who was being shown, and then all of a sudden there were a couple of clips of companies and people where there was no information on the screen. You just saw them flit across the screen for like 3 seconds, and then the next clip, and then the next clip. And one of those clips was me dancing with Manhattan Tap and Heather Cornell, and they did say Manhattan Tap, but it was not on the screen, and that kind of bothered me a little bit. You know,
You're like,
because
I didn't know I was in this movie.
First of all,
Yeah.
nobody
Were
asked
you in
me.
it?
Nobody asked. Well, I'm sure they asked Heather because Heather
Right.
had the footage. But Heather was painfully underrepresented, not misrepresented, underrepresented. And she wasn't interviewed, and she should have been interviewed for sure, as should have been Lynn Daly for sure, you know, and Linda Soldenell and Anita Feldman. Like, there were a lot of women that were not given a voice, while other women were talking too much.
And we
Or
don't
a
have
lot,
to name who
let's
they
just
were,
say.
but yes,
Well,
there were other women in
yeah.
it.
I think there's an interesting point that Max brings up in terms of like how much history that we have access to or know of in terms of the earliest part of our craft, and how much has happened in the past 40 years that we're still trying to learn and figure out, like, what is the actual story, right? Because a company like Jazz Tap Ensemble or Manhattan Tap or Anita Feldman's company, like, each one of them has a body of work that could be an hour-long documentary easily, right? So if you're taking a survey, which is essentially what a film like American Tap is, you know, someone like Brenda Buffalino with American Tap Dance Orchestra would be the representative of that entire, like, concert dance genre and thing that happened in the 70s and 80s and early mid 90s. And I think that's insanely difficult.
Yeah.
Right? It's insanely difficult because there's going to be someone somewhere in the world who watches that film that doesn't know that Brenda's connected to a context, right? And that there were other people working in similar contexts in that space. And that goes for almost every person in that film, right? And I think in terms of challenging things with documentaries, it's the same thing with history books, right? You have a word limit, you have a time limit, and you have an editor, right, in both spaces. And once an editor gets a hold of your book, like, they're gonna make edits based on word count, grammar, and stylistic choices that can change the meaning of the stories, right?
Not that you know anything about writing a book, right, Andrew?
No, not at all. So, I literally went through this 3 weeks ago. So I've been in the process of writing a book for the past 7 years. And finally got it to a copy editor, got it back, and there were whole sections that they had rewritten for stylistic purposes that changed what I had wrote. Right? Like, it didn't mean the same thing. And if I had trusted them and said, okay, this is great, I'm going to accept all the changes and, like, put it to print, I would have come out with a book that was not what I wrote, like,
Right.
literally. And so I think there's a challenge there when it comes to documents like this that aren't source material. These are surveys that they're really good introductory pieces, but for anybody who has any interest in the actual craft, like, you take all the names that are listed, you go to a public library or go to YouTube or go to some other place where you can find source material and you search those names. American Tap should not be, like, the only book.
Right.
This is one thing I will add to what I said before. I'm not saying that it was a bad documentary.
Right.
I liked it, and I don't disagree with things that were said, and I like the artists that were represented. I just felt some of them were a little overrepresented at the cost of others. However, it's great that it's out there, but there needs to be more. There need to be more documentaries, maybe more specialized ones that are about special themes within tap dancing. You know, like, there are a gazillion books and documentaries about Paul Taylor, and there are more specific works about artists in genres that are more popular. There are books about specific ballet dancers, entire books about one dancer. That has not happened yet in tap dancing. We're not that far yet. That's why I support every single person who wants to and manages to pull off a documentary or a book. Every single piece that's being written and published so that the public at large has access to it is very valuable, because the more books are on the shelf, the more relevant we all are.
And I think it's challenging because we're looking at the stuff farther in the past and saying, yes, that's accurate, that's good, that's what I know. But because we are in the present and in the more recent years, we understand, no, they're not mentioning this person, that person, that person. Even watching the documentary, I'm seeing Postmodern Jukebox, and Sarah doesn't dance them anymore. There's been 2 other dancers since then. And I'm sitting in the back, and I see Demi, and I'm like, she actually has held that position between the time the documentary came out and now. So it's interesting how people get remembered based on the sampling that they get. You know?
I think I felt, I wonder what it looked like to someone who isn't on the in. Because I feel like we're all on the in, and I see Michelle and I make all her connections. Okay, I know those little quotes that are misread, but we get it. And I think that's why there's so much understanding and leeway in us watching it, but I don't know if that's going to be read properly. And I also felt that they chose tap celebrities, which makes sense. People who've met this award, so that's the 3 bullets they're going to get underneath their name, and that's just not. I didn't enjoy the 3 little stomper for Nicholas or
that's
or
really
a co-choreographer at Dorrance Dance. I just think he has so much more in his,
absolutely.
I don't know, and
You're like, it's Nicholas. That's all you gotta know.
they
It's like,
associated people with the thing that would give them the most like grounding, or I don't know. And it was also those celebrities and their like tentacles and who they could grab, and it made sense to me. Like Michaela, I saw her people. I saw Dorrance Dance. I saw Chris Broughton. I saw the people that Michelle pulled in. You saw the LA people, and it made sense who was all there. But there was this, I don't know.
But I noticed that in the more historic footage and everything that was looking at the history, the pivotal moments did seem to be defined by fame. You know, when they were talking about Bubbles, they're like, this was the first famous tap dancer. Everybody knew him. Fame always seems to be an ingredient, and now everyone can be a producer. Everyone has access. You no longer have to reach a certain point to get seen. But it's interesting how fame always functions as something, and it's bothersome to the people that are in the community and can see it and are constantly seeing the choices being made and how the outside's viewing the inside based on, oh, we bestow this person as a leader. And it's like, who gets to pick and why?
Slightly toxic message maybe to young people. I don't know. It made me feel a little bad.
Yeah.
Well, but I think it brings to light this idea that tap dance has from very early on, from Jim Crow, right, made a jump from just being a cultural expression to being a commercial one. Right. So right from the jump, we've had to deal with this craft work being in the context of, I do this thing in front of people, we get paid for it. What does that do to how this thing gets created, the choices that the artists make, the fact that we consider ourselves artists and not just people who dance? Like all those things, to think about. Diane Walker tells a story about how her mom was like kind of semi-disregarding of her dance career, and then at one point in their kitchen, her mom just like laid down this time step and was like, listen, everybody used to dance. You're not special.
Oh my God.
Right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's like, that's literally like 4 generations ago.
Yeah.
Right? And we don't have a context where like our families are tap dancing in our kitchen.
Right.
No.
Right? Just because that's the thing. And so I think there is an interesting balance between the personal relationship with the craft, what that process is like, what that practice is like, where that can go for each individual dancer, and this pursuit of, I think I really want to do this for the rest of my life and get paid for it, and what that is like. And I think for every person, all our documented footage is of people who got paid to be in a film. Like, that's what we have.
Yeah.
I think a burden tap dance has is that people view it nostalgically or view it in a certain way, and that whether they're informed or uninformed, you know, whether they're in the community and they're more of a purist and they're like, it needs to be like this or it doesn't have integrity and you're messing with what I see as sacred, you know, or you have people that are completely uninformed and are just creating freely and maybe don't even realize that they're stepping on toes. My husband was on World of Dance last year, and I actually had some disagreements about just the values of the show, because at the end of the day, it's highly commercial. They're not looking to show the pinnacle of artistry during the process, and they're saying, oh, could you put a backflip in there?
Right.
Could you put this? That's why hip-hop groups always win. At the end of the day, it's about the dollars and the consumer, and the mass consumer is not informed. The mass consumer is looking for flash and probably does not even care about the integrity of tap dance, and that sucks, but it's the truth. So how do we navigate that in a way where you make something that doesn't even need to be accessible, but something that just gets seen, something that actually can carry it forward without, perverting the original thing?
I have a contention with the mass consumer is just looking for flash.
Yes.
I think the mass consumer is looking for peace or escape or something that's not their daily.
Distraction.
Distraction,
Yes.
at the worst,
Yeah.
right? And so it's on the content creator to provide something for them that is not more detrimental to their health, right? Flash is easy, that's candy, right? Popcorn, go buy a bag of popcorn, you'll get full and then you'll get hungry, you might get sick, right?
But that's so you think you can dance right there.
But that's,
Bags of candy.
But why
and that exists.
I find like someone like Michelle, for example, has the blessing of the greater population, the consumer side, whether they're tap dancers or not, and also from inside the community to no, you can be creative. You can partner with Nicholas and make this electronic, interactive, new form of tap dance. She seems to have that blessing in a way that maybe some other companies or individuals might not, where it's like you're not allowed to do that. And I think it's a great thing. I'm not
Yeah, I
saying
mean,
it's a bad thing.
that's fantastic, and I'm Michelle's biggest fan. But if she had not met certain people who opened doors for her, she wouldn't be where she is. She'd still be underground. That's the unfortunate truth for every single person that we are talking about all through the history. There were always certain people who picked out a certain person for certain qualities and put them on stage or in front of people and gave them access or gave the audience access to this person's artistry. It is now not quite as cutthroat as it was in the vaudeville days, but still, it depends on that little extra bit of happenstance or good fortune or good luck that the right person walks into the room at the right time, sees you do the right thing. Yeah. And that's something that we don't really have much control over. We are all trying to always put our best foot forward and perform at our best, and we also try to record it to the best of our ability. That's why I made my CD, because I know the musical value of what I do, and I wanted it to be documented at the best level possible so that generations after me can go, oh, this is what this actually sounded like. This is really the music that's in my head, and this is what it sounds like at its best possible, But that doesn't mean that it's going to be popular, unless somebody picks it up and puts it in front of a lot of people. Exactly how to manage that, I don't know. But we are all at the mercy of this dynamic, And because the platforms that we use are wide open, but also we are in a cascade of information. It is very difficult, for the audience to pick stuff out unless they're pointed towards it, So there's control of the flow and there's control of the public's attention. That's something that we are continuously hearing about, like how Facebook or how Instagram or how these news outlets direct the public's attention by manipulating the public's attention. And the public hasn't been manipulated to pay attention to tap dance necessarily.
Or to artistry.
Or to artistry,
Or to
yeah, there you
quality.
go. Right.
Anything like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Danny, I'm wondering if you can comment on the Canadian perspective. Whether, because I'm born and raised in Vancouver. I moved about 5 years ago, and I did notice, like, East Coast, West Coast, totally different. North and south of the 49th, totally different. I'm sure Calgary and Vancouver, your experience in both cities, maybe more similar, but still very different. What can you comment on sort of your relationship to the community and maybe how media has made that more accessible or shapes your experience?
I mean, there's definitely differences in the community, but I mean, across the board, like, I feel like the scene's the same a little bit all over Canada. I mean, Toronto has a very strong scene. Calgary has things happening. Vancouver's always had a scene. Other than those three places, I don't know how much is happening. I guess I'm not really 100% sure about the question. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Just, do you find that it's different being a Canadian? Like, the movie's called American Tap, and it's seen as an American art form, even though it's a mix of different roots and different influences. I don't know if it feels different being a Canadian person doing what is seen as an American art form, or how it's different.
I mean, there's definitely
here.
I feel like there's more awareness in the States of the art form and what it's about and things like that, even though, it's still fighting for its place in certain things. I feel like there are a few dancers very dedicated to trying to hone the craft, to taking class, to dancing with live music, to things like that. But in terms of the public, I'm not sure if they're totally aware of what this thing really is about. One of the comments, yesterday just in the car was like, well, what about Canada in the documentary? But I'm like, it's an American art form.
It's American Tap.
And the scenes that happen, all around the world are pertaining to what's happening in the States. What's happening in the States is influencing everything everywhere else. And all the cultures around the world are different, and we're gonna view things differently. We're gonna interpret it a little bit differently all over the place. But yeah, it's a struggle to I guess, communicate what this thing's about. And I think it's important to have people like...
At this point, there's so much happening in the world that most people in the States have no inkling about. They don't know that it's even happening, and they certainly don't understand, or they're not aware of the artistic quality that some of it has, and of the adventurous nature and the very not American concepts that are being applied to an American art form, making it much more interesting than if it were just in America, which is something that has happened, thank God, to all valid art forms. Jazz music or improvised music, yes, is originally an American art form, but it is everywhere. On every continent, in every country, you find musicians who have studied the American art form and history of jazz music, but then have taken their own background and turned it into something individual. The same thing has happened with tap dance. And it is quite staggering what has happened the world over. And also, there are a lot of things that have happened in the history of tap dance in other countries that nobody here knows about. When I was in Japan last year, I sat with a documentarian and scholar of tap dance in Tokyo. This gentleman has compiled a history of Japanese tap dance that will blow your socks off. Yeah? There has been so much tap dancing in Japan by Japanese people that you would never, ever expect. This guy had programs, actual, real, original programs from the 1920s of Japanese jazz tap dancers performing with live music. He had records like shellac records.
So cool.
Yeah, of tap dancers, Japanese tap dancers tap dancing with Japanese orchestras singing swing music in Japanese in like 1932.
Christmas.
Okay?
Yeah.
How many American tap dancers know that? I didn't know that, you know? And this kind of stuff in Russia, there's a history of tap dancing that is bizarre but amazing. Yeah? Yeah, and it's maybe not quite as deep as in Japan because, of course, Japan had a deep connection with America. Yeah? But I have myself made interviews with artists in Cuba that used to tap dance in the 1950s and learned it from watching movies, just like I did, basically. Yeah? There's so much history of tap dance that is not American. Yeah? That is interesting. It hasn't had an impact on America necessarily, but it's certainly relevant to those places that have developed tap dancing. That it would be of benefit, I think, for everybody who is in this art form to know more about what has happened globally with tap dancing. Yeah? Because if you want to know about jazz music, yeah, and you only look at the United States, you are sorely missing a lot of the greatest stuff that's happening.
Literally a world of stuff.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah? And it's just like that with tap dancing at this point.
Awesome. I think we should open up for Q&A. Do we have any cues that we can A?
A?
I love when
Oh.
my jokes. I knew that was gonna happen.
I thought I was lame. Just kidding.
But not all at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, please, one at a time. Does anyone on the panel want to ask someone else on the panel a question or a general question?
Radio. I'm pretty sure all of you have done a live radio show where you've tap danced. What's that experience like, and do you think tap dancing on the radio is something that's valid and important?
It sounds like an indie band tap dancing on the radio.
It's a good name.
It's a really good that and Baby Blanket. I want to have a punk band named Baby Blanket.
Excellent.
But anyways, tap dance on the radio.
My experience isn't very thorough with the radio. I did one thing, but all the albums that PMJ produces are then just audio, and there's tap dance on them.
I'm just kind of going because
Yeah.
you were just on the radio and you said 7 minutes and boom and
Monday morning.
just
Let's go over here.
Radio, like, news is interesting. Radio is interesting. It's such a tight time limit, and it's whoever the host is has done either their homework or they have their questions that are right there, and they're like, we're going to ask you this. You have about 15 seconds to answer each question, and then you're going to go up, you're going to dance for like 30 seconds, then you're going to come back to the mic and plug whatever you're there to plug. I think tap dancing on the radio is fun. Tosh was in his car while the radio segment was going on, and I think he noticed the radio segment was happening when the tap dancing started happening because he thought his radio was broken. Right? Because it was just popping.
What is
like
this
the speakers
racket?
are popping. He's like, "What's going on? Like, are we good?"
It sounds really good on the radio. Do you know, like that sort of, it portrays itself really well on the radio.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Like for me, I find that anyway. I found that listening to you, I found that the actual sound that you made was really clear and very, very appealing, I guess is the word I'm looking for. So more so than on TV when I'm distracted by what your face is doing and although she did talk about your face and your contortions, which I thought was pretty funny. But anyway, so when she talked about that afterwards.
Drummer
so.
space.
Right.
But I thought that I think it lends itself to the medium really well.
Yeah.
They have great, mics, they have great,
Yeah.
so I think that was I thought it was a brilliant sound. So
Cool.
to me, I thought if I was listening to it as somebody who didn't know the art form, I would be interested in that art form because it sounded spectacular. Like better than you would hear in a theater, better with people talking and there's someone here. It was it was clear as a bell, and it was
Cool.
beautiful.
That's the reason why I'm asking the
Yeah.
question.
It's like, thank you
Yeah.
for spoon feeding that.
Because
I had a feeling, yes.
because on television, there's no way you're going to get the texture and the sound quality across that we as tap dancers want you to hear. There's no way. I was able to do that on my CD. It was very hard work, and it cost me so much money. Yeah.
But who's counting?
But who's counting? Yeah. But radio is sort of like this step in between.
I agree.
If you are with people who are really interested in what you're doing and know what they're doing in their medium,
Oh.
it's a really amazing thing. And I've done a lot of radio shows in different countries with different people, but I've done entire 2-hour shows, performing, a full actual concert with in between interviews. I've done radio shows where I was asked to make a playlist, to give my musical choices and stuff, and talk about it in relationship to my CD and stuff like that. And I've done interviews, but in general, I was much happier with the outcome because of the sound and because of the information provided and the interest from the DJ or the host. That the result was always much more satisfying to me, and I believe much more impactful on an audience than most television appearances, because the sound is never satisfactory.
No.
Unless you have a TV set with a sound system that's like a recording studio. But on the radio, it usually sounds better.
I mean, the other thing that I've experienced is that on television, they're asking you to dance on whatever floor the set has.
Right, exactly.
Which is
Yeah.
Which is usually
fiberglass or
crap,
something.
or concrete.
It's like, this will work, right? It's a floor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll put down
it's the right
plastic
floor.
for you
Yeah.
so you don't
Yeah.
damage the tile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happens. It's like
It's the basic problem is that the TV people don't care about the sound that you're making.
right.
They don't understand.
They don't
either.
understand,
They
no.
think you have your shoes and that's
Exactly,
what you need. They
yeah.
have no perspective. And
They're just going from the visual.
Yes.
Well, and that's an interesting thing, because then you get into the question of what is the instrument of a tap dancer? Is it the shoes or is it the floor?
both.
I think, what's the instrument of a guitarist? Is it the pick or is it the guitar?
The contact of the person plus the pick and the guitar. I think it's all integrated.
But what's
Yeah.
the instrument?
Well, in my opinion, it's definitely both. That's the problem with tap dance, because you can't always bring both instruments.
Right.
I mean, a pianist has to bring his hands
Exactly.
and has to have a piano.
You could put shoes on a tap board.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Don't have tap
Yeah.
dance.
But we don't always have control of the floor, and that's the problem.
So the lesson is always bring a tap board.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
And the people who can afford it do.
Yeah.
I would if I could afford it. I do as often as I can.
Yeah.
Did they have that floor for you on Monday, or did you bring your floor?
At the radio show?
Yeah.
The
was
guy
wondering
the
the
guy
sound.
went
I'm
to
curious.
the shop at the
Yeah.
CBC and pulled out a wood
Literally
plank.
plywood.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was wondering how that sounds, because I was really impressed with the sound.
Yeah,
I thought,
he just found a wood plank in the building.
Did that happen? Was that a stressful thing when you got there and you're like, then they had to find it? Or did you kind
No,
of talk
I-
ahead of time? You're like, I know you're not
Called
gonna
them
have
up
the
ahead
right
of,
floor. Yeah.
On the call,
We do
like,
this.
what do you need? I
Yeah.
said, I need a piece of wood. They're like, any kind of wood? I was like, maybe any kind of wood.
Yeah.
And, you just hope that they bring something that's not, water damaged.
That's the bar right now.
Because,
That happens too, though.
Yeah.
I think to a certain degree you have to play the opportunity for what the opportunity is, right? A 7-minute radio show that's going to bring people to a live event is to get people to the live event.
Right.
It's not to have the best sonic tap dance performance ever on CBC, right?
That would be nice too.
It's just, it'd be amazing.
Nice.
It'd be amazing, but there's only so much energy that you can expend on every single 15-second moment that you get in life.
Sure.
So if they're excited to have you there and they're willing to get a piece of wood for you, you're like, great, get me the piece of wood. I will be there, right? Because you know that they're going to be concerned for your well-being because they're excited to have you, right? If they're like, my boss told me that you're the person that I should talk to because you're the guy that's doing this event and we think we want you on this radio show. What do you need? They're like, well, I need a piece of wood. And they're like, what kind, man? Like, I don't think we have anything. Like, that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm able to be in control of all the variables, like I build my own floors, we put them in the trunk of my car, like my company has danced on these 3x3 foot floors for shows in theaters, in parks. I've taken that same floor onto TED stages because it controls the variable, right? And it's better than speccing that floor to them and getting to the venue and being like, that's not what I spec'd.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? So you build it, you get a car, you stick it in the trunk, and you go to the gig. And I carry my own microphones.
Yeah, that's ideally controlling all the
Right.
all the
So I
variables.
got it. And then the only variable is the sound tech.
Right.
Right?
And if you can bring that one too,
Yep.
then you're
Then
happy.
you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's all a matter of
Yeah, of
money,
course.
yeah.
And that's where quote unquote production value
Right.
comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And usually when that production value comes in, it's big enough that there is some sacrifice in what you're doing, maybe. I wonder if people see, like, I don't know if, like, tap dancers are okay with how a tap dancer is portrayed in, like, something like Postmodern Jukebox. Because there is a level of, like, entertaining. There is some, like, can you be proud of what you do and entertain these people who've never seen tap dance before? Usually a bunch of old people, really. And you have to give them a show that you as a tap dancer, knowing where you came from, that I'm proud of, and that I'm trying new things every night while still
Entertainment.
meeting this
Yeah.
level of entertainment. And maybe some tap dancers aren't okay with doing both of those things.
Well, slight aside on that, I appreciate you actually wore clothes when you perform with them, which is not always the case when you have a featured dancer. So,
I was talked to about that.
Yeah.
They wore pants and I was talked to, which is
like
crazy.
they said, you gotta show a little
Yeah.
ankle. Did
They
that
just
happen?
said, so what's up with the jumpsuits? Because, I don't know, that's like a whole nother, it was very
Right.
subtle. But still, it was something that I was like replacing a female in the company and I wasn't representing, I guess, the showgirl of the time that they really wanted me to be. But slowly they've accepted the
Yeah, you wore clothing like everyone else on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I wonder, this is maybe a question for young tap dancers. If I see like a musical artist do multiple songs, multiple albums, and they can be drastically different, and we listen to them with like open ears, and we're okay with that. But if a tap dancer does a solo that isn't, I almost feel like some like nervousness and like I don't know if slapback is the right word, but like if I'm putting on a character, if I'm being something funny, if I'm doing something that involves a story and that's not just about the instrument, and I know like maybe no one get mad at me, but like that's important in some people's artistic expression, and I sometimes feel in front of tap dancers that that's not
Do you feel
what they
judged?
want it to be about.
Do you feel judged?
Yeah, and like I can get past that because I like what I do, but,
Yeah, good, okay.
but it's something that I notice.
Let me say something about that. Entertainment as a threat to certain people. Tap dancing has always been expression and entertainment. There are some of us who don't just tap dance, who have other skills like acting, creating atmosphere, entertaining, comedy, music. When any of us use talents in addition to our tap dance skills, certain people get threatened, and I don't really understand why. Yeah? It's some terrible insecurity that they can't get over.
It's because they don't have the talent.
It's maybe because they don't have that talent, yeah? But I think art is art. If you want to express yourself and you want to put on a character, and you can because you've got the skill, then please go ahead and do it, because that's who you are. And no one has the right ever to tell you you cannot do who you are. Period, the end.
I'm not gonna drop this mic, but mic drop.
Okay? Because it's a skill.
Yes.
And it's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy, ladies and gentlemen.
Andrew's brewing something right now.
No, I
little
think
nervous.
it's, no, you're fine.
I'm holding on.
You're totally fine.
I'm sweating.
No, you're totally fine. I think historical context is important.
Yeah.
In terms of this conversation, because yes, tap dance has always had to deal with an audience, and in terms of dealing with an audience, you get to figure out as an artist how you want to interact with that audience, right? And nobody gets to tell you not to, but everybody gets to talk about you,
That's true.
right? So when Miles Davis turned his back to the audience, everybody talked about him.
Mm-hmm.
Did he care? No. But everybody talked about him. When Wynton Marsalis doesn't turn his back to the audience, everybody talks about him. Right? So in terms of tap dance land, there has been backlash in more recent history to any conception of tap dance that looks at it as, how can I say this? Undermining the artistry of the art.
Right.
Right? So if somebody saw Brownie Brown and Buster Brown do the washing machine, you would look at the washing machine as this.
Thank you.
I knew there would be dancing.
And that's it. That's the dance. Right? If you walked into Swing 46 on a Sunday afternoon and you saw Buster and Brownie, two short old tap dancers, do this dance, you would go, "What in the world is this?" And you would probably walk out as or you would say, "That's really funny."
This isn't the
Right?
hummus dance.
And the challenge for someone who might feel responsible for everybody's perception of this craft would be, what is someone who doesn't have context going to think about tap dancing if they walk in and see that? Right? And so then the question about kind of purity of the quotation marks, purity of the craft becomes this quagmire where if you stop and you tell a joke, you're like, am I not a tap dancer anymore? Or am I in the lineage of Buster Brown and Gregory Hines and Honey Coles and like all the cats who used to stop and tell jokes, including John Bubbles, right? And I think in a time and a space where that conversation is prime, because there's so much going on and there's so many opinions, understanding our tradition and understanding where like the choices are in our craft becomes powerful for the artist, because you say, no, I know people used to tell jokes while they danced, so I can do this. And the people who are purists also know that. They just have issues with how that might be perceived.
So I guess
Right?
it comes down to, what do you know? Can you make an argument for it? And do you care about their opinion? Can you be resilient
Yeah,
to
of
the
course.
critics?
But I think that's in every art. That's in choices of life, right? What do you know about how the choices that you live by will show up? Do you care about other people's opinions of it? Do you care about how those choices affect the people that are in your sphere of influence? And do you have a defense for those choices? If you don't, life can be really challenging. And if you care about about the effect of those choices on other people, then your choices might change. And you have to grapple, like every individual has to grapple with that. Because you might make choices that, like, it's not the choice I want, but it's the choice that's best for the people around me. Right? And that becomes this weird kind of matrix of decision making.
When you mold yourself to the public opinion, you mean?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, public opinion has such a negative connotation now, right? It's like, nobody should care about what anybody else thinks so that we can all self-actualize, right?
Can I get him a t-shirt?
Yeah, sure, right? But I think if nobody's actually isolated, right? If we work against the cultural trend of isolation and say nobody's actually isolated, then everybody's choices affects everybody around them. And if we take our first sphere of influence, then we say, what is the best choice that I can make for this inner circle? If that best choice is not doing the thing that I want, but doing the thing that's best for them, then I think that's healthy, right? Because then we're in service of this circle. And if that circle, if the relationship is based on love, then they are asking the same question. And then you have concentric circles going around where people are making the best choice for the circle that they can most clearly influence. And then things become healthy, right? And then people will see themselves in the betterment of others, right? And then they will get cared for. So you will feel like you have the space to do what it is that you're meant to be doing. And people won't be fighting over whether like a shuffle is a shuffle. They'll be fighting over whether that thing that you do, I can do, so we can do it together, right? And I understand when you're doing it, so I can do it with you.
I just wanted to say something. I'm a librarian, so like the whole time you guys are talking, I'm like, yay!
Shout out!
Libraries. But just a comment about that access point into tap and talking about making it entertaining. And I think what drew me into tap is so much about the social history of it, right? And the conversation today in the news and what's been happening with communities and social injustice, like that's such a hot topic. Not that it never wasn't a hot topic, but it's very prevalent today. So I feel like that's a very, I think that could be a really good spark into the history, into the art form especially too, because so much of it is about racial inequalities and, you know, social injustice and all that kind of thing. So I just wanted to bring that up too, because I think to combat any sort of, I don't know if stereotype is the right word, but like there's other angles to the art form that people aren't aware about, and it's not until you start to dive into it that you realize, oh, there's been a whole history of, you know, going back to, you know, the minstrel and you know, people co-opting, you know, this Black art form. So I think that could be a really powerful way into talking about tap as an art form. But that's like what I had to say.
No, I agree, and I will add to that that making art using tap dance gives us a big responsibility, clearly, that we all have to carry and that we all have to respond to. And we all have, it's our duty, I want to say, you know, to inform. And I have made it my choice to include in my presentations or in my teaching my specific angle on the social history, which is, yes, the history of tap dancing, but because I know a lot of people who are also very well versed in that and do that more, I have decided to go and talk more about my specific angle of the history of Afro-Cuban social history and how that plays into American culture and how it is very parallel with the development of jazz music and tap dance. There are things that happened almost simultaneously in Cuban history and Cuban music that if you look at it and you have the information, you see the parallels, and it's very, very interesting. And I know that in our community, the tap dance community, there's nobody else who's talking about that because I'm the only one who went and did the research and can talk about that. So I made it my calling or my purpose to talk about that. Of course, I'll also talk about tap history and the ring shout and all that, you know, because I find it amazingly important and also beautifully interesting to show that and talk about it and then show the parallels, how that relates to my information from the Afro-Cuban side, because it is all connected. But I've also gotten pushback for many, many years about doing that, because that's something that is for the ignorant not connected to tap dancing and is not tap dancing. I've gotten over it because I just do what I do. But people, if you do something that's individual, that's not exactly the traditional thing, there is a risk that you might get pushback from somebody. But, the truth is, just be yourself and do what you think is important. And then, make sure that you are able to defend it, as we said. If you make a choice that is unusual, be so informed and make sure that you have the wherewithal to intellectually defend why you're doing it.
I love everything about that. I totally agree. People need to be informed. They need to be brave enough to say, I actually do have a voice and I have personal agency, and the word calling you used is wonderful. And I hope that something that can be a takeaway from this is that everyone has the tools and the personal responsibility to carve out what their place is and to honor the past, but also to use the tools there to say, okay, how am I responsibly using my place within this community? And understanding that everyone does have a place and a responsibility within their own circle. Any question? Yes.
For a while now, I've been working on an essay about Gregory Hines and the influence that he's had in making tap dance seem more as an art form, to the rest of the community. And I've, with the research I've done, I've found a lot of interesting things about how he used media such as movies and television and stuff like that to bring his name out there. And I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on that kind of stuff?
I am a tap dancer because I saw the movie Tap. Done. And I know for a fact that at every opportunity, Greg allowed himself to insert tap dancing. So he had his own television show, the Gregory Hines Show, primetime sitcom, right? Think about that for a second, right? He made sure that at least in one episode there was a tap dance scene, right? And I contend that because he did that, he was never taken as seriously as he could have been as an actor, right? Because in the hierarchy of entertainment stuff, dance is at the bottom.
He was brilliant in the Muppet movie.
Yeah, phenomenal, right?
The best actor there.
Best cameo in the world.
Yeah.
Gregory Hines, Kermit the Frog, Miss Piggy.
All my favorite people in one.
Yeah.
Fantastic, yes.
Beautiful.
When you go on a desert island, those are the three. Because you'll be able to sand dance for hours.
Yeah.
I'll never be stumped on that question again. I have my answer.
Yep. So I think to a certain degree, Gregory purposely did certain things to make sure that everybody knew he was a tap dancer. And that allowed everybody to know that there was a tap dancer who was active in the world at that level. And that becomes a platform for the art form in general. And he also did this thing where in interviews because he was who he was, people were like, what do you think about tap dancing today? Do you think it's on the rise? Do you think it's on, is it dying? You get all those questions. And he would always say, no, I'm super excited about what tap dancing is like nowadays, especially because I know that there are people like. And he would name 4 or 5 people. And that article would go in print. And so when everybody saw that, they're like, oh, here are 4 or 5 people that I can now look for. Mm-hmm. Because this guy said that these are the people to look for. Right? Being someone who's front running, right? If you're running a marathon, the person who's running in the front of the line has the hardest job because you break the wind for everybody else, right? You run against the resistance of the wind, everybody else is behind you. Now, if you're gonna be in that role, that's okay. if you're going to be in that role, you have to know that you're doing that for the benefit of every other runner behind you. Because it's highly likely that you're not going to win the race. The person who's running right behind you is going to win. Or maybe third. The person who's running in third will win, right? But you are not going to win, especially in a long distance race, right? So I personally believe that Greg knew that what he was doing was that. He went, he had his career. He was solid in his career. And he was very level-headed about what the entertainment industry was and was not. And for that, for that lesson, I'm very grateful. The thing that I think is so unique about what he did with that level-headedness was this. How many artists today would you know that would open their floor for a good 15 minutes in the middle of their one-man show? And be like, anybody tap dancing in the audience? Did you bring your shoes? Come up to the stage. They're like $50, $70, $100 tickets. And people knew, so they brought their shoes. And he would let them come up and dance with them. And so there are hundreds of thousands of people in America walking around with stories like, that day I got to dance with Gregory Hines. And what kind of encouragement is that to a dancer or to a person on a journey? Right? And so you work in the platform of the media, and then you work the people. And then you have both things happening at the same time. Right? And I think that to me was super special.
I really appreciate your perspective on like a nurturing approach to leadership and being like, there might be ignorance, but it's okay. Let's cultivate it. Let's do our part to actually help things move forward versus shutting it out.
Yeah, I think Greg knew life would figure it out. Like the people who would not end up tap dancing just wouldn't end up tap dancing.
Yeah, do Orange Theory instead.
Right.
Do you think that, sorry to interrupt, do you think that culture still exists in a way now in the media? Like, is that something that, like, so what he did for the tap dance community, what's happening now in media in tap dance that is, do you guys feel a responsibility? Do you feel that someone else has responsibility? Do you feel that there is responsibility?
It's something as small as like sharing a gig with someone that you think would be a great recommendation.
Yeah.
Like trust that there's room for everyone and that those recommendations aren't taking away from you. Like I didn't seek out Postmodern Jukebox. Sarah Reich recommended me out of nowhere.
So
like
it's a community. You guys
it's a
have
community
that
of
sort
like
community.
it should be a community of
Yeah,
love and
great.
like just trust that there's space. So I don't know, when you find those people that are that giving and warm and it's the greatest group of people. I don't know, I didn't have that for a long time. And when that finally happened, I thought this is a fluke. Like this.
Thank you.
It's just because as a young dancer, a young athlete, or anything of the sort, it's pretty cutthroat, but it doesn't need to be.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't know. That was great.
No, I mean, I think that I agree. Yeah, that's what makes it worthwhile, and that's why I chose it as my way of life, because I have experienced this sharing and this openness and this humility and this need and urge to commune, in so many places in the world. And I've experienced it in the tap world and in a couple of other communities as well. But, the tap family is really so big, and there are really, really nice people, tap people, everywhere on the planet. And that's one of the greatest gifts that life has given me, I will say that, and I am happy that through modern media, I can stay in touch with them a little bit more easily. Yeah, that is an amazing thing, and I love media for that. Of course, media is challenging, but at the same time, God, I can talk FaceTime with somebody in China or Japan and exchange steps or do a rehearsal, like I can FaceTime a rehearsal with somebody in Australia or in Austria or in Brazil or whatever. I can teach a lesson through this medium that didn't exist, 30 years ago or 40 years ago. That's an amazing, amazing thing that has helped our community become stronger. So we need the media. Everybody needs media. Tap dancing has always needed media. We know the problem, the challenge that arises from the fact that there's only, one entry from Charles Dickens from the 1840s about Master Juba. Can you imagine if there had been people in the room with iPhones?
Yeah.
I'd watch that YouTube clip,
Definitely.
So, we need it and we live in it.
There's more potential, but more overwhelm than ever. And I
Of
think
course.
that's the challenge for everyone here, not even in relation just to tap dance, but your
Right.
life. How do you navigate
Right.
that the digital sphere is no longer not real or separate, it's completely enmeshed.
Mm-hmm. But you can live love in the media, like what you were talking about. You can share and influence your circle by using the media in such a way. However, of course, we all know that the opposite is also true.
Yes.
And some people like to engage in the dark side of that, which is sad, but that's what we live with.
I mean, all the more reason to be on the other side.
Exactly, yeah.
It's kind of like most people who have that perspective of like not wanting to engage on the dark side, disengage.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where it's
Right.
like, no, actually, if we want that space to be different, we have to engage
Yeah.
more than anything
We
else.
have to be active,
Yeah.
actively
Yes.
changing it for the positive. Yeah.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Um,
Last one.
I'm curious, in what ways do you all reach out to non-dancers to introduce tap dance to them? And as, I don't know how many Americans are in the room, but I am one, from New England, which is a heavy sports town. How do you recommend I convince a group of people to not watch football on Sunday? How does tap dance compete with football?
Bring them to a show you think they'll enjoy, or just show them something you think they'll enjoy. Don't show them something you think they should see.
Well, so this
Maybe-
is when we come back to media.
Right.
If you're not in a major city, media is all you've got.
Right.
Sure.
I'm from New Hampshire, if that's helpful.
That's great.
Yeah.
So-
Pembroke, Mass.
What up?
Friends. But how you do it is my question.
Chicken wings.
Obviously.
Yeah, say
No,
there will be snacks.
There has to be bait. There has to be some sort of bait.
I will tell you
Ideally-
that Josh Hilberman brought
Yes.
Martin Klaus to Conservatory
Yes.
2002, 2003.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it was wonderful. I was there. It was
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. But of course, in order to appreciate something like what Kurt and Klaus have to offer, you already have to have people who kind of know what they're looking at, Well, halftime shows and things like that in the mainstream media are the ideal way to like throw a little nugget of something really, really good and really, really strong. But, when's that going to happen? I can remember Savion did a halftime show once with Stevie Wonder. That was like eons ago.
Mm-hmm.
But that, I think, was the only ever time that tap dancing was on a halftime show on football.
I feel like if it were to happen,
Yeah.
people would riot though. Like, let's say the next Super Bowl, I do not follow football. I don't care. I don't know what year it's going to be. But the next Super Bowl, if there were like a tap dancer performing and let's say it weren't a particular person, there would be uproar. And
But
it would
maybe
be
it
like,
has
why
to
are they the
be-
representative?
Right, sure, yeah.
Maybe it has to be that particular. So I take my partner, for example, who
Mhm.
is involved in tap dance because I'm involved peripherally and my daughter's involved, but he is interested in a kind of a base level, sort of, he has this interest and he enjoys it, but whatever. We were watching Estefania's videos last night from her dance and her take on what she does and the music that she uses, which happens to be music he's interested in. And it's music that he relates to. And he therefore all of a sudden said, okay, wait a second. This is something I didn't know I was interested in. So maybe I can stop watching the news for a minute and let's look and find another video. Okay, he doesn't watch football, but it's the same sort of thing. And so I think for me anyway, the approach, I think that's what you're saying is exactly right. You have to somehow integrate it. And maybe it's not exactly what the purists would say is the art form or the whatever else. It's like you, Claudia had friends who went to see you when you came or when and it was like, oh, wait a second,
But
this
it's
is a
stepping
whole
stone
new
for them
thing.
to then, yeah.
That's exactly right, and it might not be like you were saying, and I don't agree that it's not what the art form is, but maybe it's what some people might say, oh, that's not what I would call tap dancing,
Yeah.
but it's the stepping stone and that's the kind of thing that I think we have to be more open to as a community,
Yeah.
that people will have to say, hey, maybe we have to dance to different music, maybe we have to put on a show for halftime that's interesting, that people might like, that Beyonce singing to and we're tap dancing to, like that. I don't know, maybe we have to approach that in a different way.
I think for me, if I hear you right, you're like the arc of the question is audience development to a
Yes.
certain degree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My process for audience development has been fishing. Right? You have a bunch of places where people gather. You have a bunch of tools as an artist. You might have a bunch of different collaborators or like different interests in terms of the production of content, and you put as much as you believe is good from your side out, and you fish for who likes it, such that you start to get a reaction, and then you fish again, and you keep that cycle going. Not every artist is in that space, right? Some artists are, I do this thing, I sell this blue pen. If you want a blue pen, you come and see me. This will be the best blue pen that you will ever get.
Don't ask me
Right?
for a black.
Don't ask me for a black pen.
Don't do it.
Right? Other artists are like, I got a blue pen, I got a black pen, I got a purple pen, I got a pen with no cap. You want a pen with a cap or no cap? I got all kinds of pens.
And I got finger paints.
Right.
And body paint.
Right. Like whatever you want, I got it. Right? And I think all of that is good for the craft in general. And if you're in a space where you're now you're on the front line and you're using artists' content as your bait, then you're like the radio disc jockey. And you're saying, all right, I've got a listenership that's maybe the 75 people or the 100 people that I know are on my block that watch the football on Sunday, right? What is going to be the thing that I could invite them to or get them to or bring to them that they would like the most? I have no idea what that answer is. But I think with as much stuff as is out there now, there could be a pretty hip playlist of things that, as a survey, somebody's bound to say, I really don't like that, but I like that. And that seems to be the start for me.
There's one thing that I distinctly will recommend not to do. It's one thing that I experienced with Roxanne once.
Oh, no.
At the what's it called? That hotel on 32nd Street. Did you ever go to her jam?
Yes.
There? Yeah, the Maxwell Lounge or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
Maxwell Lounge. Yep.
It was this little jazz club on the second floor of this hotel on 32nd Street in New York City. And it was a really cool jam that Roxy had. And Pina Bausch came by.
Never heard of her.
Right? This is random.
Pina who?
Yeah.
Pina who? Yeah. But one time, it was the World Series, baseball, not football. And this joint had, the tap floor was sort of like here, the bar was over there, and people were sitting here, and there was a giant television overhead, and they put on the World Series game during the jam session.
Excellent.
And we were dancing our butts off while the people were not watching us.
Oh, no.
That was one of the most awful experiences ever in my tap dancing career. To dance in front of and jam, you're really trying to be in the moment and you have a whole crowd of people who are looking over you and who are they don't even know that you exist. Yeah.
They're like, give me a beer.
Yeah, exactly. So don't do that.
Yeah.
That will not draw in any additional crowd.
However, similar experience.
How could there be a similar experience?
Similar experience. Had a session at a bar in Williamsburg, Teddy's.
Yes, Teddy's, yeah.
On North Berry Street. And the little stage is here, people over there, the bar is right there. Behind the bar are 3 screens. The New York Knicks had made it to the NBA Finals.
Whoa.
The game is on. We hold the session until the game is done. So now, instead of starting at 8, we're starting at 10.
Yo.
We've been there since 8 o'clock.
Oh, God.
The minute the game is over, the band hits, we start. Everybody turns around and starts watching. And we have a captive audience for the next 2 hours.
Because they were happy?
No, they weren't necessarily happy. I can't remember if they won.
I'm guessing.
Say again?
It wasn't a game 7, I'm guessing.
No, it wasn't the last game. It wasn't the last game. But it was an important game, and I can't remember if the Knicks won or lost the game. But I do remember, halftime happened, we played maybe 2 songs, and then we're like, okay, it's over, the game's back on. Everybody just turned around and watched.
Okay, so here's what I propose. We, at least in New York City, we get organized, we hit every single sports bar in New York City with at least one tap dancer and a 2-piece band on game day. And we go, it'll be like a takeover. Yeah. Boom. And as soon as the game stops, it's ba-da, 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 ba-da. Yeah, man.
You can tap dance to the
Sure, yes.
Yeah, because it's a thing, man. It's audiences are audiences, and they will enjoy what it is that we do if they're already there.
Right, that's true.
Right? So if the game brought them, that's fine with me. I don't mind. I don't mind.
Or you go, we organize all our students to tap dance on the street outside the stadium.
Yeah, sure.
While they're tailgating or something. Yes. I mean, tailgating it's a party. So if you join the party with some music and some tap dancing, they'll be paying attention. They'll be gnawing on their chicken leg. And,
I never
that's
saw tailgate
cool.
until I moved to the States, and I was like, I'm seeing more people
That's the
outside playing cornhole than I've ever seen anywhere in Canada at one point in time ever.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions before we wrap up?
Wrapping up. I thought we just got started.
we can keep going. Please.
Okay.
People can share choreography online a lot easier now, all over the world. You can see it. So I wanted to ask how maybe that's changed what you share or people's personal styles of what you've seen growing up, because they can be influenced by people around the world a lot easier and take inspiration easier. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Or how that's changed, or if you've seen the shifts, or...
So I had a dance company in New York City for 10 years. 10 years starting in 2005. 2005, 4, 5, 6 was when YouTube started. 3, 4, 5, 6, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And I made what I think now is probably the incorrect choice of not sharing any full pieces online. We would cut trailers, post the trailer. But there is no clip of anything that Cats Paying Dues did online that's a full piece. Or even a minute of here's a thing. Because I came from that world of get the video cameras out. You see a red dot, you tell the stage manager, they tell the usher comes down, and that camera's off. Right? Yeah.
Whoa,
like,
dude.
You're like, I don't know what that's like anymore.
when we did imprography with Savion at the Joyce,
Yeah.
like if we saw a red dot in the audience, we told the SM, they told the house manager, the usher came down, and that camera was cut off.
I don't even see faces.
Yeah.
I do that now in my show at Carmen to Havana and back.
Yeah.
In the venue, we tell people not to use their cell phones because they're supposed to be in Havana in 1950. And we're trying to have them, we're trying to help them have an experience that they are actually experiencing, not through the screen.
Imagine that.
And it's very difficult. And there are like 7 or 8 of us who are constantly going to people like, it's not allowed. You're not allowed to film. Please put your camera down.
It's 1950,
It's
guys.
very hard.
We're in a
It's very
time
difficult.
machine.
Very difficult.
There's a loophole in it.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
So I think in terms of sharing, that was my experience then. Now like you try and make a project so that it can go online. Right? At least part of it or something.
You make a music video.
Or even the process needs to be shared. I find increasingly it's like it used to be about the product. Like we're going to work on the show, we're going to produce the show, you're going to go see the show. Whereas now it's like, here's us behind the scenes doing this, and now I'm driving to pick up this and that. And I know that I don't make the personal choice to do that. I'm just a private person. But I think that a lot of people do see success. I remember when you came to Jam Camp a couple weeks ago, and with the Q&A with the kids, you were saying like you use social media as a tool. It can be a tool, right? And it can be a very difficult thing to navigate.
Yeah. It's encouraged with a lot of jobs, actually. Like, it's somewhere in a contract where I've signed, you have to post a certain amount about this event. You have to show the fans some of, like, the behind the scenes. It's part of the marketing with a lot of stuff that I've done. And it's a part of your personal marketing, which is a little unfortunate, but I don't unfortunately see it as a negative thing. I enjoy like sharing the process and that, but I think some people feel I should post more, I should show people more, but it doesn't feel like a job. But I do have to be careful. You have to be on the you have to it's scary to share too much. Sometimes I put videos on mute because I want the music to be special in that moment of the show, or I think sometimes people see a trailer and that's enough. They don't need to go to the show. And that's why no one's coming to shows, because they can just see enough online. And I don't know. I'm shocked that some of these amazing people I go see, I'm like, why is no one here? Like, they're famous.
Everyone's on
Netflix.
Netflix.
Like, I don't know. It's an effort to get to shows. It's money and effort and time, and I don't know.
I guess that question came from too, like stealing steps. I forgot to say that. Like stealing steps was such a huge thing. You'd have to go to shows to see them, or go to a show twice. But people would change everything they did
so that people couldn't steal the steps. But now it's super easy to.
YouTube was like slow. Remember when you knew every clip that existed of one person you kept looking up? And I'd type in their name the next day and be like, maybe there'll be one more. Like with Michelle Dorrance, I'd be like, there's got to be a new one. Like, and I had them memorized, and then all of a sudden it was just like there's a video of you that Waldorf.
Yeah.
That was my favorite clips, and like I could hear Sarah and Jason in the back commenting on everything. Like, but then everything just exploded, and I got overwhelmed, and young people are overwhelmed, and it's just like YouTube is to terrify.
Media everywhere. Oh my god.
But stealing steps, maybe people can talk about that.
I've seen. I think in a certain slice of the journey, there's a flattening of like everybody's dancing almost the same kind of sort of, and then once you get out of that slice of the journey, then it's like voices. There are like tons of different voices, and I don't know how people are getting through or out, but I have to believe that what people are watching and the place that they go to get stuff has to do with this flattening, right? And it's like, if there is a viral clip, then that's what everybody's looking at, and that's what everybody's trying to grab. And that never existed when I was coming up. Like, you had the person that you chased around, literally. Yeah. I mean, thank God for my parents. We put 210,000 miles on our car in 2 years. That's a lot of driving that my dad did
Mm-hmm.
as I slept in the back seat.
Yeah.
Right?
That's love.
Yeah. Chasing the people so that I could see them and be in the spaces and have like vague recollections of what it was like to be 3 feet away from Slide when he was dancing. That, I think that thing is harder to find. And so the easier thing to find is whatever's online. Right? And whatever's online tends to be whatever's happening now. Right? You have more content from now than you have from any time before. And so the way the algorithms work is that they're going to find you the thing that's most relevant but more intense than the clip that you're watching. Right? So longer or with more likes, or which is why there's studies that's been done in terms of how YouTube radicalizes people. Because if you go and you watch a clip around some hot topic, the stuff that goes in the recommended are clips that are more radical, like more intense than the clip that you're watching about that topic. So if it's like gun violence survey, over here is like actual videos of gun violence, right? So if you're looking at tap dancing, you're gonna find the longer clips, or you're gonna find the things that are more engaging, have operated with more engagement, and that's gonna be more modern stuff. It's not gonna be older. So I think that goes back to, if people are engaged, finding the thing that will get you to the thing. So Tap Legacy Foundation, online, we have a list of names of tap dancers. Because when I used to sit with old cats, that's what I got. They're like, do you know about this person, this person, this person? Oh, this person lived in New York with this person. And this person danced with this person in Philly after they left New York. You're like, all these people. Right? And there wasn't a place to go look them up. Right? So you'd go to the next old cat and you're like, do you know these people? Can you tell me about? I have a list. Right? We used to have like boxes of pictures that we would wait for Brownie to be in town and be like, can you tell us who's in this picture? Because nobody else knew. And so having that first point of entry to say, oh, Lois Bright, Google, what's out there? I don't know.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Most likely. Yeah.
But if it's not Google, then where are the other resources? Because every single database of every public library is open source, which means it's online and it's free to access. So you can find out where the stuff is, then you plan your trip, right? And you do the trip once, and you get all the stuff, right? But you can do all the planning ahead of time. And you can access academic resources online, too. So there's tons of ways to get in. You can't get to the BBC library without going to the BBC.
Right.
So you might have to call the BBC and be like, look, I heard John Bubbles was on this show. Do you have the reel? And they'd be like, yes, we have the reel. Can I see the reel? When are you going to be in London? Right? And then you go to the BBC and they pull out this, 16 millimeter or whatever, and you sit there for an hour watching 3 minutes. Over and over and over, because that's the only hour you're going to get.
And you can't copy it.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a need for some sort of centralized resource there's the list of names, and maybe there needs to be some sort of resource for young dancers or people that need to be more informed or want to be more informed. Like, where do I find this stuff? Because
there's one person besides Andrew who has done,
the homework.
more research than anybody I know, 2 people. And they have more information than anybody realizes in this country.
Let's get the
You
name
have
drop.
no idea. Kurt Albert and Klaus Bleis in Germany. They have done more research than any living being on tap dancing, trust me. They have so much information. I've seen it in Vienna. A few years ago, we did a 100th birthday celebration for Carnell Lyons, my mentor, who was also the mentor of Kurt and Klaus, the stuff they put out there, like photos like you have, like an entire gallery full, film clips that no one, and I mean no one, has ever seen. They have more information than anybody on tap dancing.
Hint, hint.
Because they went and did exactly what Andrew just said. They went to they had a list from Carnell personally of all the places that he had been. And then they went and they researched and they started piecing together like in his entire life. They know more about Carnell than Carnell knew about Carnell. Like literally, stuff that Carnell had forgotten. These two guys have put together his entire life. They also know a ton about Buster Brown because they went to every single town, and I'm not kidding, every single town that they could find out that Carnell had gone in his entire career. They went to the town physically. They went to the town, they went to the library, they went to the newspapers, and they found the clip about Carnell Lions. Yeah.
Your dad, that's love. Whatever that is obsession.
Yes. For sure.
The fact that there was that level of obsession and that level of organization,
Absolutely.
like what a great resource.
Yes.
For the future generation.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even know.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, every single New York tap dancer would totally lose their if they saw what Kurt and Klaus have.
So we should tell them. Instead of getting mad, not that anyone here does, but instead of getting the pushback of you're ignorant, you don't know what you don't know, like making it accessible, teaching, taking it as a learning opportunity instead of a conflict, and like you don't even know.
Well, and so the reason that I co-founded the Tap Legacy Foundation with Gregory Hines in 2002 is because I was sitting around with tap dancers for the first time in my life on a consistent basis, and that conversation kept coming up. I was in tie-dye, we were doing shows, people were mad that audiences didn't know about what we were doing. And I'm like, well, where are they going to go and find out? Nobody's going to go to the Lincoln Center Performing Arts Library just for the fun of it and like look up Steve Condos. Right? Random audience member who's buying tickets because they want to come and see tap dancing. Right? So unless there's like an intuitive learning environment that allows people to explore the craft in the same way that we have had an opportunity to in real life, but in a way that's like, oh, this is fun, right? It's not going to happen. So somebody has to build it.
The Science Museum for Tap Dancing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the
There's
goal.
There's a business idea for like someone listening to this, someone in the room, like, there's space for these sorts of innovations.
I mean, we're about, I hate putting a date on this, but we're about 3 months away from an alpha release of a digital archive. So an open platform that would allow people to consolidate all the material that we have around the world. And actually cross-reference everything. So if somebody types in Carnell Lions, it's like all Kurt and Klaus stuff, at least the list of it will come up. And if there's an article that lists Carnell with the other businessmen of rhythm, or with Buster because they happen to be in the same town, then all of Buster's stuff would pop.
So like an IMDb, Wikipedia, tap dance specific.
Putting everybody in relation with each other.
Because relationships is what actually makes it like come to life.
Right, exactly.
That's the glue. Yeah.
Make it real, or as close to real or what it really was as we can get.
Because at some point it's going to connect to who's dancing now, right? And then it's real, like then it's really real. Then it's like, oh, I can come to a show and ask you about this dude because I know you were in the same space with them. I want that question. Like I want to come out of a show and somebody goes, I knew you were at Swing 46. What was that like? Right? More than, I love what you did at the show.
Or versus you having to be like, I'm pretty cool and I've got all this experience you should ask me about. Like, it's a lot nicer when someone kind of has some sort of base and can engage. And I think that's maybe the disappointing thing sometimes, is there isn't the base of knowledge.
Right, exactly. Well, it's not part of, it's not part of the public mainstream canon of information. That's the essential problem. People grow up, especially here, or not here, in the US, I should say, with a level of information that is preposterously low. And I mean, like, in general, about the world and everything. Yeah? And the information about tap dancing is like non-existent. Yeah? People, kids nowadays don't even learn who Louis Armstrong is. So then what do you expect the rest to be?
Right.
So that's the beginning of the problem. But somebody creating a resource or a somewhat entertaining information center or museum that actually can attract people to go into a space and experience interactively some information about our art form and walk out knowing more about it and having had a good time on top of it, that's, I think, something that we should strive for. And clearly, he's working on it. And
yes,
I do what I can. I kick Kurt and Klaus every time I talk to them to come to New York and share this stuff. But they're also, struggling artists, so they can't afford to bring all this stuff with them because it's like physical stuff that they have to bring. These photos and literal film footage. They had actual film projectors in Vienna.
So we're going to Europe, is what we're saying.
Yeah,
we're getting a plane for everybody here, and we're going to go check it out.
Yeah. I mean, this goes hand in hand with the world tap kind of approach. It's the same in music. There wouldn't be hardly any information on the art form of jazz music if it weren't for European music. We were talking about this yesterday. If it weren't for European music shows where you'd have like 2 hours full of live jazz, with the Kenny Clark Francis Boulan big band on Italian television, or on the BBC, or on the German TV, we wouldn't have the amazing clip of Jimmy Slide, Buster Brown, and Chuck Green and Baby Lawrence if it weren't for German TV. Because in America, nobody cared, That was already over. It was just all rock and roll, So that's really important to acknowledge and to go look and go engage with the people, or this guy in Japan, who has devoted his life to figuring out the history of Japanese tap dancing, which is like, so amazing. What an unbelievable purpose, how beautiful is that? So, that's our responsibility to make the connections, find out, and say, hey, can we connect this thread with this thread, so that eventually we have a multicolored, beautiful rope of all this information that the audience or the public can then pull on. And whoosh, here it is.
Thank you, Andrew, Max, Danny, and Demi, for a great conversation. Thank you to Screen Dance Forum and Dancinema for producing, and thank you to Vancouver Tap Dance Society for hosting us. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know by leaving a review, engaging with us on Instagram at FrameformPod, or sending us an email at frameformpodcast@gmail.com.
Frameform is a production of Rixie, hosted by me, Hannah Weber, Claire Schweitzer, and Jen Ray. Edited and mixed by myself and Mason Carlton. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.